Okay, we're on tape now. Now, my assumption is that they're going to edit this and stuff.
Yes.
So basically, from the list of the questions, they look like, well, first of all, let's start. Where were you on 9/11 when it happened?
Well, I was down in New York for a sitting. I was at my chambers on the 22nd floor of the courthouse at Foley Square, and preparing to go down to the courtroom for our session for the day. And it was almost time to leave to go to the robing room when I heard the greatest crash and noise I ever heard in my life. Now, of course, New York is full of noises. Certainly after that, I heard a lot of cars and sirens going back and forth, but I looked down into Center Street. I didn't see anything there. I went to my side window, and I looked out, and if I strained sideways, I could see the tower, the World Trade Center, and I saw it was on fire. And a couple of the floors were smoking, and huge flames were shooting out of the building. I thought it was an explosion of some kind. I had no idea what it was. I called my clerks in. I said, look at this. This is a terrible thing. I'm sure some people are going to be injured and so forth. And one of them said, why don't you turn the radio on? And I did. And then for the first time, I heard that a plane had struck that building. And you couldn't see any parts of the airplane sticking out. It just had gone right in, and there was no indication that it was a problem of that kind. Shortly thereafter, Judge Kears, who was presiding, called me and told me that the plane had been coming into the World Trade Center, and Judge Parker, the other member of our panel, had seen that second plane hitting also, and we were going to have to evacuate the building. So the word came to evacuate the building, and we all rushed out very quickly, leaving behind all our papers and all the matters that were available and necessary for the sitting for the week. We just couldn't take anything with us. We went out so quickly. We got to the stairs, the steps of the courthouse, and people were running every which way. We were very fortunate to find somebody getting out of a cab, but we got into the cab, my clerks and I, the two clerks and I, and another woman who asked if she could come, and we headed immediately uptown. And we could see behind us the World Trade Center as we went up uptown. And the fire was continuing to burn very, very hard, and the radio in the car, taxi, reported what was happening, and a woman was on a rooftop nearby explaining all the terrible things that were happening, the people that were jumping out the windows. It was a horrible, horrible thing. And at that point also, we heard on the taxi radio that the plane had hit the Pentagon. And we knew at that time that there was a terrible problem afoot. And as we proceeded uptown and looked back out the window, the back window of the taxi, we saw the towers collapse. And then we got uptown. I went to the hotel where my wife was waiting, kind of panicky, because I couldn't raise her on the cell phone. She couldn't call me. And so we went into the hotel and stayed there. We had planned to leave to come back up here because there was no court going to be in session for the rest of the week. So we had to stay overnight because it was our understanding that all the access to and from the city was blocked. And so we remained in the hotel overnight. The next morning, I spoke to Chief Judge Walker at his chambers in Connecticut, and also to Judge Kears, who was then at home, and found that the court would be entirely closed, the courthouse would be closed for the rest of the week. So that afternoon, we were able to gather up our belongings from the hotel and come home. Our clerks came the next day. One of the clerks went back on September 27th. Sometime later, we sent him back down to the courthouse, which was then open, to try to get some of our things out. He reported that he had to walk from Canal Street, the the lower part of the city was closed, and he went to the courthouse, and he said the smoke and the smell was still very pervasive and terrible. And we heard later that the filters in the courthouse had to be changed a number of times. But the week after the event, I understood that the court was sitting again at the Association of the Bar building in the city of New York, and that some of the clerks were there trying to keep the court going. And so eventually the clerk staff returned to the courthouse, and we resumed sitting there. But for communications, the matter was very difficult because I was up here. There are other judges who do not have their chambers, permanent chambers in New York City. We were able to communicate with each other and with Judge Walker, who was in Connecticut and who had a fax machine and so forth. But the fax and the telephones and the internet were all down in the city, and it was very difficult. But the people down there were magnificent, and they were able to get things rolling. We got some deliveries of papers, and the court kept rolling. FedEx was used. They eventually got some cell phones. They got the fax eventually up and running, in and out. At first it was just one way, and the communications resumed.
So a short-term impact on the court, as the question poses. Are you back up and running normally now, Your Honor?
Well, we are, and but of course we've adopted some emergency measures just in case of emergency with phone numbers. The security is much more intense in all courthouses, including Foley Square, especially at Foley Square. Here in Albany, we have increased our security measures as well, so that we now have 24/7 security in this courthouse, and it's much tighter than it's ever been. The people in the Northern District, as people in other districts also, have sent people to New York to help out, and everybody, in my opinion, has really performed magnificently. The difficulty, of course, of communication was the problem that we originally had, and I remember that I was scheduled to sit again in November, in the week of November 5th, and I received a memo from Judge Straub, who was due to preside at that session, and he was able to get a memo to me, I guess through the mail or through FedEx from home, because from somewhere, wherever he was, because he wasn't working, he couldn't get into the courthouse. And so we got the cases eventually for November set up here, and I went down for that sitting, November 6th. That was the first I was back in the courthouse. Now what we did on that week was that the panel that was supposed to sit from September 12th, the rest of the week, had some afternoon sessions so that we were able to do our cases that we missed the week of September 11th. Mm-hmm. And so the courts scarcely missed a beat. And I'm really proud to be associated with a court like this, where everybody is so dedicated and able to pick up even under an extreme tragedy like this one.
One of the things we're interested in is were jury pools impacted? People couldn't be contacted. Were there any changes to the way the courts would normally pool jury?
Well, it wasn't
naturalization ceremonies, and other than hearing cases, but
the other parts of the court operation.
How it operates.
Well, of course, our court is an appellate court up here in the Northern District. My understanding from the people here is that there wasn't that kind of impact because the communications were open here, and people reported for jury duty, and everything continued pretty much as before, except a number of emergency procedures again were adopted here. Just in case. This is a widespread area of the Northern District, and we have court in a number of places, including Albany, and so things were able to be continued pretty much as they had been before.
Now, you mentioned earlier how magnificently your staff performed. One of the things that we're wondering about the morale of the staff. Did this tragedy have such an effect on someone that had to leave?
Well, I'm not exactly sure about individuals down in the city. I know as a group it was a magnificent performance. I know that people were concerned in the clerk's office, and there had to be some reassurance to them. Unfortunately, we're right in the middle of things down there, and of course they were also concerned about health problems, the smoke and the dust and so forth, that had to be straightened out so as to assure them a safe place to work. And of course, like all of us, some people were more affected than others.
And finally, Your Honor, 6 months after 9/11, has the court system, in your opinion, been profoundly changed, or was this, I hate to trivialize, say it was a blip on the radar screen, but what is your perspective before 9/11 and post 9/11?
Well, of course, now we're all aware, not only judges and court staff, but all Americans, of how vulnerable we are. And so I guess that we've been affected in the sense that we're all looking over our shoulder a little bit. But one thing it has done is to make all of us more aware of the situation and better prepared for the future, so that the new emergency procedures that have been adopted will help us out of any future calamity. We know that it's important for all the institutions of government to continue operating, and especially the courts. We want people to know that we'll be continuing to do our job no matter what happens, and I think we have done that. I wouldn't call it a blip on the screen, but it certainly was something that we were able to overcome very quickly. And as I say, it's really a privilege to be a member of a team that can do something like that.
Anything to add, Your Honor?
No, I just think that it's a situation that will always be seared in my memory. I know shortly after this event, we had a prayer service, interfaith prayer service in Hudson, where I live, and I was asked to be the speaker because I had been there, and I said that it was an event that I wish I had never seen, and I hope that I never see it again.